Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about a 1966 Japanese war movie. This is called Red Angel, directed by Yasuzo Masumura. And this is a recent release by Arrow Video earlier this week, I think January 18th of 2022. And simultaneous releases in the US and the UK, as both Arrow and Indicator are now releasing their films in the US. Most of the films that are released in the UK are now being released in the US simultaneously. Much easier to purchase for sure, and a real temptation for my towards my allowance for what I'm going to spend on Blu-rays. But they're loaded with supplements, and if I'm going to spend $25 for a video or Blu-ray, I want to have supplements with it. Red Angel is a film set in wartime, late 1930s. We're in China. It's set in the army hospitals that are it begins in an army hospital in which the wounded soldiers are recovering. But then we go to the more frontline type MASH units, incoming. You expect no comedy, no MASH-like comedy in Red Angel. This is gruesome, it's harrowing, especially the opening 20 minutes or so. We see amputations. Luckily it's in black and white because the blood flows. And is it too much? I don't know. I'm not too good with scenes like that. It seemed a little bit too much to me, but in the supplements we learned that the star of the film, Ayako Wakao, she thought it was too much, and also it's mentioned that Masaki Kobayashi, who made a kind of similar type film, a much more elaborate 3-film Human Condition, also set in China, he also commented it was too much. But I guess Masumura wants us to really understand the dehumanization and the traumatizing of what this kind of situation is, where doctors have to decide who gets operated on, who they can't operate on. These are foot soldiers. These are not officers, so there's no blood transfusions available for the lower ranks in the Japanese army. So it's dehumanizing for the soldiers that are dehumanized. The doctors are, the nurses are. But one nurse named Nishi, and this is played by Wakao, and I'm probably mispronouncing her name even though I heard it about 20 times in the commentary. She plays this nurse who wants to retain her humanity. She's absolutely fabulous in this movie, and she was in 20 movies directed by Masumura in 12 years. That's got to be one of the most prolific collaborations between a director and an actor I've ever come across. So she wants to retain her humanity. She has pity. She's counseled by her superiors. Don't care so much about it's not your job. Your job is to do the best you can for them, but you can't go that extra effort that Nishi wants to go. She understands the necessity for individual desires. This is that individual desires are paramount, and even though they may be at odds with social conventions of which she lives in. And as I said, she's dealing with this kind of traumatized masculinity. And if nothing else, this film has a kind of, it presents love itself as a kind of perverse, a kind of perversity in this kind of world that Nishi is living in, and it's very illustrative, very interesting in its illustration of male-female relationships, the roles that men and women feel, especially with somebody like Nishi, who is rebellious against this kind of suppression of the individual, and her pity on these soldiers. And Masumura's style is also really interesting. This is widescreen scope, black and white, my favorite format of all, and and when you watch the commentaries, one of the reasons I love commentaries is you can see how Masumura uses the widescreen. It's so creative. And he employs long takes. I don't think there's a close-up in the movie. In the supplements, we get an introduction by Tony Raines, and this is good. It's not real long, but he does comment on the evolution of how the Japanese audience viewed World War II and its aftermath, and in Red Angel, as in other wartime movies about the Japanese attitude, the soldiers are seen as victims. They're not responsible. They're victims of a society that militaristic, nationalistic, where the society tells you you're not an individual, you're part of something else, and you have to suppress that individualism. And so they were victims of that society. Now, this is different than Kobayashi's Human Condition, where Kobayashi resists that idea that we're victims, that everybody is guilty. Then we get a visual essay with Jonathan Rosenbaum, and this is really good too. Masumura made 50 films, and Rosenbaum claims he saw 40 movies. So he has a really intense view of Masumura's work, and he's critical of many of aspects of his filmmaking, including aspects in Red Angel. Then we get a commentary by David Dresser, and this is really good. He's a scholar of Japanese cinema, and there's so much information on Masumura and the different people in the cast, and his view of Red Angel is that its weak part, the part that doesn't really elevate it to another level, is that Masumura never gives us any indication of why the Japanese are in China. What are they doing there? They're imperialists. They're conquering. They're trying to conquer a very large country, and they've committed many atrocities, and it's brutal. And there's no prisoners taken. The civilians, I think they mentioned 14 million Chinese died in this conflict with the Japanese, but we don't get any sense of that because I think Dresser says it was about 500,000 casualties, 400,000, something like that. 14 million Chinese were killed, but it's nevertheless a terrific commentary, even if he does point out some of the weaknesses of the film. Then we get a booklet. And I'm not that familiar with Arrow, but I guess you have to buy the original copies, whatever number, and then you don't get a booklet anymore. And it's a really nice booklet. It's got some great photos from that's our lead actress, and this is the doctor who she falls in love with in the course of the film. Love is a very important element to Nishi's life. And saving the traumatized doctor. She has a compulsion to save these men that she comes into contact with. That's one of the patients that she administers to, and she becomes convinced that even though she's trying to do good, she's actually causing them to die. And so this kind of struggle that goes on, this internal struggle, very interesting. And in this booklet, we get an essay by Irene Gonzalez Lopez, and it's very good. And she really does confront the feminist and gender angle in this film and some of Masumura's other films as well. So, and this is Arrow also gives us alternative cover art. And so overall, if you can take the the gruesome surgical sequences in the beginning of the film, and even if you can't, because it's tough for me to get through them, but I made it. if I can make it, just about anybody can, I think. You're going to find a very interesting, very challenging movie. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen to me. Comments are welcome. You guys take care.